Hello everyone, this is Professor Warner. Today I'm going to talk to you about installing Active Directory. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is to make sure that Active Directory is installed. Active Directory Domain Services is installed. As you can see here, I went through Server Manager, I checked the box. So this shows me that Active Directory Domain Services is installed. Once that service is installed, you do not have to reboot or anything. The next step would be for you to go and promote the domain controller. So you'll click right here and you will click on promote this server to a domain controller. If you look here, it tells you that the feature installation is already done. Configuration required installation. Installation succeeded on my server. So now I'm going to do promote. Once I do promote, you would see there's a couple options. If this is the first domain controller, you'll click add a new forest. Once you click on add a new forest, you have to put your domain name in here. I'm going to just put here CIS165.net. That's my first domain controller. Okay? So if you can see here, I have CIS165.net. That's my first domain controller. My next option that I have would be to add a domain to an existing forest. So if I click on add a domain to an existing forest, I have the option to add either child domain, which means the child domain would have the same name as that of my forest root domain. If I want a tree domain, the tree domain is going to have a different name than what my forest root has. So if I want a separate name, I would add a tree. If I want the same name, I would add a child. Now, if I want to add an additional domain controller to the existing domain, so I'm adding more domain controllers to an existing domain. So Microsoft recommends that you have at least 2 domain controllers in a domain. Microsoft, again, I'm going to stress, Microsoft recommends that you have at least 2 domain controllers in a domain. So it's important for you to know that, all right? That you need at least 2 domain controllers for a domain. And the reason why you need that for fault tolerance and load balancing. I'm going to repeat. You need it for fault tolerance and load balancing. So one of the things that you should consider when you're working on this is you should consider that you need to at least, all right, if you're going to install DNS, these are things you should consider. If you should have a global catalog server, if you should make it a read-only domain controller, all right, and in which site the domain controller should be located. So read-only domain controller means that you only have a copy of it, but you can't make changes to it. So let's say we're going to do a new forest. So I'm going to add CIS165.net. As you can see here, I'll hit next. Now, once I hit next, it's going to go through the process. Now here I have my functional levels. If I click my drop down arrow, you'll see all my functional levels. I could go all the way up to 2008. So this is my forest functional level. And then if I have my domain functional level. So the domain is 2016. If I choose 2008, I click on the drop down arrow, you see I could do my domain functional level to any one of these domains, right? So we're going to leave it as 2016. So that's your functional level. Now it says specify the domain controller capabilities. If you see, this domain automatically becomes a DNS, a domain name system server, or a DNS server, and it automatically becomes a global catalog server. And here I'm going to have to put in my directory restore mode password. This is for if Active Directory crashes, let's say AD crash, and I want to restore it. I'm going to have to use this password. So I'm going to put a password in here. So I'm going to hit next. So I hope you understand this. Then we hit next. So once I hit next, it's going to ask me specify the delegation, create a DNS delegation. I'm going to say no. I'm going to just leave this like this for now because it did not found the DNS server. It's going to create one for me automatically. So now it's going to find me my domain net BIOS name. This is for backward compatibility. So let's say if I have a Windows 95, a 98, an XP. This is for backward compatibility. So this is what it's going to use. It's going to use a domain net BIOS name. Now if you see the domain net BIOS name is the first numbers or the first characters are assigned to my domain name. I'll hit next. Now this is very important. It says specify the location of Active Directory, domain services, database, log files, and sysvol files. This is where your database is going to be located. C Windows NTDS. Your log file C Windows NTDS. And sysvol C Windows sysvol. Now these folders have significance for you. You have to remember this, right? They have significance. They're of major significance to you. All right. So if you want to know, because Active Directory is a database, it's a multi-master database. Okay. So this is where your database is stored. That's where your log file is stored. And sysvol folder is a shared folder containing the file based information that replicated to other domain controllers. All right. So anything that has to be replicated, that's where it's going to be stored. Now what you'll see, we have a summary of everything we've done. All right, we have a summary of everything we've done. So here, everything is done here for you. So you can look at a summary, you can export it. Then we're gonna hit next, and it's gonna start doing the installation. Now I just hit install, and there we go. As you can see, it's applying different settings, and it's applied to different settings. It'll go through these steps, okay? Now once it's finished applying all these different settings, you'll be able to log in. So let's wait and see. It's going to apply the settings, and then once it's finished, we'll log in. So I'll pause it for now, and then I'll continue it when it gives us a login screen. So here we are. I'm using VMware Player, okay? So if you're using VMware Player, this is what you'll see. You want to hit Control Alt Delete. It's going to bring you up. Now you see you have your domain name / the administrator. So now we're going to put our password in. If you have to remember the correct password. So I'm going to just reset my password, guys. It's going to change my password. I'm now going to log in. So now I'll go back, make sure I do my administrator, sign in, and it puts me in. Now one may ask, how do you verify Active Directory is installed on this machine? I'll show you some quick tips. You right click on start. Once you right click on start, we'll bring up a shortcut. I'll go to system. Once I go to system, systems opens up. I go to system, systems open up. It tells me here I have a domain. If I click on change settings, see this in a second. and I click on change, tells me the domain controller cannot be moved from the domain to another. You must first demote the domain controller. All right, it gives you a message here. So I can't mess with this domain because this here is a domain controller. So that's one. Two, if you go to Server Manager, which most of you guys know how to, Active Directory Domain Services tells me, right, right here, started. So I have a service that's activated on here. My DNS is activated. So if I click on all servers, it'll tell me what I have, right? So you could actually go through this and you'll see everything right here. That explains everything to you. So this is what I have here. I have Active Directory Domain Services. I have DNS. I have File and Storage Services if I want to. And I could go through that. So that's two ways. The next thing I can do is I could go right here to Active Directory Windows administration, sorry. Once I go here, I open that up. You most likely are going to see your tools. 1, domains and trusts. 2, all right. 3, 4, Active Directory domains and trusts. Active Directory sites and services. Active Directory users and computers. Later on, we'll talk about ADSI edit. Now, if I go to Active Directory sites and services, this is going to give you a clear idea where we at. So I'm going to the physical structure now. Okay. So once I open up this physical structure, and there's other ways that you can tell too. Okay. So once I open up this physical structure, I could go to sites. As you can see, this is the first site in your domain controller. If you don't give it a site name, the first site is default first site name. That is the first site that you'll see. So I'll click on the drop down arrow. I'll click on servers. Once I click on servers, you see this is my computer name. Okay. So I'm going to look to see if this is a global catalog server. So once you right click on this, you click on properties. All right. It tells me that this is a global catalog server. So this is a GC. So this is how you know this is a GC. It's a global catalog server. Okay. So this as everybody knows is my first domain controller. So this is my forest root domain. So later on I'll show you about the schema, all right, and all the other cool stuff that we could work on in Active Directory. So this is just a quick peek on making sure that AD is installed. Now if you go to Active Directory users and computers, okay, this also give you this is your domain name, cis165.net. I click on the drop down arrow. Okay, I go to domain controllers. That's my domain controller, and it tells me which site my domain controller is in. Okay, now if I go to users, I have all of these groups. So there's 5 main folders you're going to see: built-in, computers, domain controllers is the first OU you're going to see, foreign security principal, managed services, and users. So it's 2, 4, 6, sorry. 6 folders that you're going to see. 5 folders, sorry, and 1 organizational unit. So I was right. 5 folders, 1 organizational unit. So that's what you'll see there. Okay? So that's it. That concludes this part of it. Now we'll go and configure it later. So once we configure it, you'll see how to configure it. Thanks, guys.